She originally came up as Rochelle.
Yeah, because Rochelle's biking. I saw her in Fulton. Yeah, we did family day and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was really good to bump into her. Okay, we're getting close to 1:30 here. Does anyone know if it's Laura or Lara? Because I don't know that she can hear me yet.
I can hear you now.
You can? Okay, that's great. Is it Laura or Lara?
I get called many things, but it's Lara.
Okay, it's Director Kemp, so I'm gonna have to remember that. Okay. All right, we're pretty close. There we go. Exactly 1 minute. All right. Okay, welcome everyone. We'll kick off right at 1:30. We are conducting a hybrid meeting of the Alberni Clyde Regional District Board of Directors today. So with that in mind, I'll identify the folks we have in the office. We have myself, Director Cote and Director Roberts, as well as staff members Daniel and Wendy. So we are conducting our business today hybrid format, which means that we are also coming to you live from YouTube or other streaming services based on how you're accessing us. And as a result, we have plenty of folks online today. So normally speaking, I'll start off by recognizing that we're conducting our business today on the territories of the Kopetchis and the Shuswap First Nations. And to recognize that fact, even though we are coming to you live in a hybrid format, that means many of us are coming to you from either New Channel territories of various sorts, as well as perhaps even Coast Salish territories or the territories of the Lekwungen speaking people, depending on where we're at. Although I don't think we have any delegations, so that might not be the case. Okay, so that brings us to the approval of the agenda. We do have one additional piece of material, and I'm wondering if we could have Wendy, our corporate services, to please kind of take us through it, because it's a bit different. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a late item respecting agenda item 9.1A. It's temporary use permit 22006 HFN Lands Corporation for 390 Grappler Road. So it's a late submission. So this has been circulated to directors and will also be posted on our website as a late item. But we have redacted certain sections under section 15.1A of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And the reason for that is those sections of the document are protected under that section of the Act, and it's a current bylaw enforcement matter on another property with the ACRD. Now, if directors did want to see the unredacted copy, we can either email it or we can bring this to in camera to discuss further. And if there's any questions.
Yeah, does anyone have? Go ahead.
I'd move the agenda with the addition.
Thank you, Director McNabb. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, everyone. We'll say Director McCarthy. And with that in mind, does anyone have any comments? During the comment section, I'm just going to ask if anyone has any need for a break. Director Shannon, sometimes you have to pick up your kids. Yeah, so around 3 o'clock or thereabouts. Okay. Is there anybody else who has any time constraints or items? Director Beckett, go ahead.
I have an appointment at 4 o'clock that I'll have to attend, sir.
All right, thank you very much. We'll try to get through this as quickly as possible and get everyone's meaningful participation. Also, I'd like to welcome Director Kemps, who is standing in for Director Rochelle Cole, who is currently biking across the rock as far as I know. So with that, thank you and welcome, and we'll move forward into a vote. All those in favor of adopting the agenda? All opposed? Thank you very much. Motion carried. That brings us into declarations. So in regards to anything Kuwait, I'm still on the document, so I'll have to excuse myself for anything that might have to do with that. But please, someone just remind me, because I might wander into it. Okay, thank you. That brings us into item 4. Are there any, oh, sorry, we have the adoption of minutes for the Board of Directors meeting dated May 25th, 2022. Thank you, Director Cote, seconded by. Thank you, Director Roberts. Okay. Any comments, errors, omissions, deletions, additions, etc.? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. That brings us to the West Coast Committee meeting dated June 1st, 2022. Thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director Steer. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried. Brings us to petitions, delegations, and presentations, of which there are none. So that brings us to correspondence for action. The next item is 6A. It is a request for a letter of support from the District of Ucluelet regarding the Ucluelet Regional Fire Hall Development Project. Who'd like to speak to this? Daniel, please go ahead.
So this is an application for the Ucluelet Fire Hall, and in discussion with their CAO and staff, we have been anticipating receiving this request. I know that we have our own applications in as well, but as a wide region, we have different areas being represented. In this case, we are in favor of supporting, given the fact that Ucluelet does provide fire services in our area, so we're also dependent on that fire hall and its upgrade. The letter clearly identifies the need, all that's in the range of 50 years old and no longer meets the requirements, building standards if there were an emergency. And so we see no reason why we should not support their application.
Excellent, thank you. Director Cote, did you have your comment? Go ahead.
I just wanted to inquire who's actually sent this letter.
There's no signature on it.
I think it's supposed to be our signature, but it doesn't say who it's actually coming from.
So the wording on the letter was provided by the District of Ucluelet, so they went ahead and drafted it on our behalf, and then we would amend that to put the appropriate signature on it. But it's just an example of the wording.
Okay, so it's a template that was sent our way. Director Roberts, go ahead.
Yeah, I was pleased to see in there that that Ucluelet Fire Rescue provides primary response to ACRD Area C, which is really good, and I'm hoping that you can get that one area of Mill Street or of Port Albion included in that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm wondering, Director Kemps, if you wanted to move the motion.
I will, I'm just trying to get my, was there a resolution on the table, a motion on the table?
Yeah, I can read it out for you. It is that the Alberta-Clackamas Regional District Board of Directors send a letter of support to the District of Ucluelet's application to the 2022 Strategic Priorities Fund for the Ucluelet Regional Fire Hall Development Project.
Great, I will move that.
Okay, and seconded by Director Steer. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, that brings us to correspondence for information. Would anyone like to pull anything else? I do, but we'll let others go first. Director Bodnar, go ahead.
This is just a comment on the provinces of BC and the Alliance for the BC Government Treaty Nations. The news release from the Premier's office is saying that in these treaties, the framework aims to increase the trust between government and treaty nations. I really hope that that is true and not just a word that's written on paper. Trust is one of the first things that in psychosocial development that we learn is the building block. And I hope that that's a building block for these treaties that happen and not just a word on paper. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Dr. Bodnar, and Director Johnson, probably correct me if I'm wrong, because I think she was embroiled in most of the details in regards to this. But I just wanted to state that the Alliance of BC Modern Treaty Nations and MONALS together have been talking to the province and making sure that the interests of Treaty First Nations are included in the considerations when they are creating the action plans and other initiatives that are falling out of the UNDRIP legislation. So that's the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. There's a piece of legislation that BC passed, and the best way to describe it is that it is not the foundation of a relationship between First Nations and the province. It is the cement mixer, and the action plans themselves become the foundations for various relationship building. What remains to be seen is how those foundations are mixed and poured, and whether or not there are appropriate things moving forward that include the interest of First Nations who have treaty or self-government type agreements. So I don't want to forget Chilcotin, but that wasn't exactly automatically included in the action plans that were put forward by the province. But there's been a lot of work at both the Monmouth level and the Alliance level to get the minister to understand. And when the Premier's office stepped in, they really helped move it forward. That being said, most of the work was done by the Alliance and Monmouth individuals, one of which being Director Johnson. So I just wanted to say that out loud because it's building that trust is often a heartfelt and honest discussion with folks who need to hear what they have to say. So you don't have to say anything if you don't want, Director Johnson, but it's been good work moving forward. And if anyone wants to say anything, go ahead. Okay. I see your video on. Would you like to speak, Director Johnson?
Sure. Just to agree with you, it's been a really great organization. Angela Bolafroni, our Director of Operations, sits on it, and she has nothing bad to say about it at all.
Okay, thank you. Director Cote?
Thank you. I say that there's no inclusion for non-treaty First Nations. So is there any option for that to be included going forward from this point on? Thanks.
Yeah, so the province is working with the bigger organizations that include non-treaty First Nations. So they have interacted with the Assembly of First Nations, I believe the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, and the First Nations Leadership Council. And those three organizations are very effective at representing the interests of First Nations generally, and especially the interests of First Nations without treaty. But the reason that the Alliance exists is because sometimes the interests of treaty First Nations are kind of forgotten, because there are so many First Nations that don't have a treaty that a lot of the focus is put on Indian First Nations. And so we just need to have some organization to work together so that we just kind of stay on the agenda as well as everyone else. So as other First Nations achieve treaty and self-government, they will probably join. That has been the case with Tla'amin and likely with Comox in the future when they're completely set up and moving forward. So it's working the way it's meant to, I think. So I just wanted to make sure everyone had an understanding there and moving forward. So any other comments or questions? Dr. Roberts, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was pleased to see that the provincial government has recognized the lands of the Indigenous community in the north with regards to mining. And perhaps you have more information on that. I don't know if you do or not.
I think I know about them as much as you do, although the recognition is important because the place of First Nations interests within natural resource projects, and natural resource management in general is going to become more and more important as time goes by. As we see things happening in places like Fairy Creek and in pipeline conversations with the Gigsan or other First Nations like the Wet'suwet'en, having a good understanding of the governance of the First Nation and showing support for First Nations to really organize their nations in a way that is representative of its people as well as its interests, just in terms of lands or authority of leaders, is going to be important moving forward. And that has really big implications for resource communities like ours. And so how we move forward in a good way is going to matter in regards to the decisions that the province and the government makes, but also local governments too. And so, especially in a place like Port Alberni, the Alberni Valley, and even the West Coast, where we understand and appreciate the value of forestry fisheries, this is something that we, I think, here have some good expertise in managing at all levels of government. And so, yeah, I'm watching it, but whether and to what degree it's going to go forward the way I think it should, it's not. that's over beers later.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive the information. Thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director McNabb. Okay, comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Alrighty, that brings us into 8A, which is a request for decision regarding bylaw A1089, elections and assent voting. This sounds like Wendy. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So the regional district is required to establish a election and assent voting bylaw to pertain to the upcoming election in October. So basically, regional district staff are required by the Local Government Act to establish certain election procedures or delegate procedures to the chief election officer. With recent changes to the Local Government Act respecting elections, our current regional district bylaw on elections and assent voting is out of date. So regional district staff have updated and created a new bylaw for consideration of the board. The main changes to the bylaw are around mail ballot voting. Legislation has changed now that anyone can vote by mail ballot. In the past, there were specific reasons you had to be out of the area, unable to vote in any of the advanced or voting day opportunities. And the other change is to change our second advanced voting opportunity to coincide with the city of Port Alberni. So the city of Port Alberni is going to be third day before general voting day, which is the Wednesday. So we were the fourth day. So we're going to just make that amendment to have our second advance voting the same day as the city of Port Alberni. So the rest of the amendments are basically housekeeping. If there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. And we have to have our elections bylaw, I might have mentioned, by July 4th, adopted by the board.
Great, thank you for that. Director Roberts and then Director McNabb, please, Beth.
So just a question with regards to permitting mail ballot voting. Does the individual constituent have to contact the regional, yourself, for example, to get a mail-in vote?
Yes, yes. So they will apply to the regional district and then we send them out a package. If it's getting too close to be able to mail it back, they can come in and pick it up and then hand it back to us. So all of that information will be provided on our website and all our advertising. So yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director McNabb, please go ahead.
So I would move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to bylaw A1089 elections and assent voting 2022.
Great to business. Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Director Roberts. Okay, any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
And I would move second reading of bylaw A1089.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried.
And I would move third reading of bylaw A0189.
We have a seconder. Thank you, Director Roberts. Comments? All those in favor? Motion carried.
And I would move that Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors adopt bylaw A1089 elections and assent voting 2022.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Cote. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Please go ahead, Director Cote.
I just thought about this. This is snail mail through Canada Post. And if there's a problem with Canada Post at the time, would we just eliminate? That wouldn't be an option then?
It could still be an option, but we'd have to, if there was no, say, there was no mail-in, we'd have to make where they'd have to hand deliver it or come up with something a bit more creative. So it could still be done, but just a modified version. But it definitely would make it a bit more challenging.
Yeah.
If,
Yeah, My Nation does mail-in ballots. And usually what we do is we set up opportunities for individuals to drop off their mail-in ballots later, that if they can't make it, but they can drop it off at a specific location the day before or something like that, then they can do so. We've also sent mail-in ballots out by courier to people who are further out, and then they courier it back. So there are things like that we can do. I don't think the legislation prescribes whether or not it's Canada Post. So that's their options for individuals who want to vote.
that is correct, yes. And we do that as well. People would prefer couriered, and we actually will accept mail ballots up to 8 p.m. on election day. And we prescribe the location, which is actually here at our office. Similar to Right Nation.
Director Cote, go ahead.
Thanks. Sorry to drag this on, but so if someone comes in and asks for a mail-in ballot on, I don't know when it would start, but they could actually fill it in the office and just leave it here?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, and just to fill in the question that hasn't been asked, what they do is they check to see if an individual has voted in person first, and then they see if the corresponding mail-in ballot is there, and they throw out the mail.
Yeah, that is part of the process, and we also make sure that they're, eligible to vote as an elected in the election.
Yes, it adds quite a bit of time to the counting.
Yes, yeah, it is a lot. There are a lot more work for sure, but it gives an opportunity to those who may not be able to vote in a different way.
Okay, well, monkeypox notwithstanding, I think that puts us in a good place. I was really worried that you were going to bring up mail-in or electronic voting, Director Coche, and I only know of 2 locations in Canada that do that, and it's like somewhere near Kingston and another, like I think it's Nova Scotia, and it's so much money to do. It's not worth doing here. Okay, so that being said, that brings us to 8B, which is the UBCM convention meeting requests. And Daniel, I think this is you. Oh, sorry, Wendy, please go ahead.
Thank you. So the 2022 Union of British Columbia Convention, Municipalities Convention is going to be held in person this year. So that's the first in a couple of years in Whistler, BC, September 12th to 16th. Regional district staff have received, or the board has received an invite from the Premier and Minister of Municipal Affairs to meet with various cabinet ministers, the Premier, in conjunction with the convention. Once again, there's also an opportunity to meet at staff level with provincial staff if directors are interested. So basically today we're just asking directors to give consideration and direction to staff on meetings they may like to have with ministers or ministry staff at the convention. I should know the deadline is August 23rd, so staff are asking if you could submit your topics to us by the 20th. That just gives us time to develop the background material that would go with the request and information on the meeting. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments or questions? I wanted to ask Director Shannon and Director Cote something, and then Director Cote, you can go right after. I seem to remember that there was something confusing or something unclear regarding not only the abattoir designations, but something having to do with insurance. Is that something that we should continue to bring up with the province? Director Shannon and then Director Cote, and then you can just go with your next thing, Director Cote.
Thank you. We continue to talk at our Agriculture Development Committee about issue. It's a continuing issue with either the cost of insurance or the ability to even get insurance in the first place. We have gone to the province with this, and I mean, as you can probably all recall, we got a letter back because I believe we went to the UBCM with this last year, and the Ministry of Ag it sounded like, oh, well, this is a Ministry of Finance, and nobody was really helping with anything. And the Ministry of Finance had said, oh, you need to come back. And there was like a different process or something, or it wasn't really somebody's jurisdiction, but what came out of it was really nothing. And that's not helpful. So I think we still need to continue pushing this. And I mean, at that level, I don't care whose job it is, but it needs to be resolved. And maybe Director Cote has some more ideas of how we can go forward with this time to try and get something to come to fruition.
Please go ahead, Director Cote. If you respond to this and then go into your own topic, please go ahead.
Thanks. I think that talking with the Minister of Agriculture or Minister of Finance, whoever's it is their jurisdiction area where they would mandate. I think that conversations at UBCM is important to put on the agenda to move forward. Other than that, yeah, I have nothing at this point. We could work with AVICC next year, trying to bring it forward as a AVICC executive motion going forward, if it's supported by all of the membership. So that's an option that we can look at. At this point, I would talk with the EA director for UBCM on what action has been taken there. And I know someone who's actually running for that at UBCM too, so it could be part of their platform.
Thank you. And did you have a topic you wanted to bring up?
I'd just like to bring back, I keep saying that I'd really like us to work in line with the municipalities, the incorporated areas, and the First Nations with our efforts going forward to UBCM. I think we're much stronger going forward as one voice rather than regional district and incorporated areas and the First Nations. Thanks.
All right, thank you for that. Are there any other comments or additions? Daniel, go ahead.
If I can diversify from that one subject, I think the other that might be useful for us as a group is the transit for West Coast. I don't think any of us expected the outcome that we saw this year when we got our presentation and delegation from BC Transit. And they didn't give us any warm and fuzzies in terms of guarantees for next year. And with the work that we've already put into establishing the West Coast Transit, I think would be worthy of a visit to ensure that we are top of mind for them as they do the 2023 budget.
Thank you for that, Daniel. I think that's a good idea, especially given where inflation and cost of fuel is going. A collective approach to help our most vulnerable might be the best use of funds at this point. That being said, I would think that there may be other resolutions coming to UBCM in regards to that in general transit, so we should look into that. And any meetings that may occur, we should probably just more tightly put into the West Coast or dealing with regional districts as a whole. I would like to have discussions about interregional transit connections, which is just the RDN, given where we're at, where we're located. But I think that might be helpful as well. Dr. Roberts, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your comments. I had a meeting this morning with the National Park and Dan Law from the Mayor of Tofino, and unfortunately, the Mayor of Ucluelet was not there. But that was one of the topics of discussion, was the shortfall in transportation. The need there is really, really imperative that it be completed in a more timely manner. And I understand that the province is, the funding that has been allocated is not going to this area at all, which is rather disheartening. And I'm hearing from the Mayor of Tofino that the expectation in the West Coast, particularly in that area, Tofino and National Park, is going to be up 15% over 2009 for visitation. So it's going to be problematic. The highways are going to be clogged, and my understanding now is that the Kennedy Lake Hill improvement is going to be completed, and they're not going to have top of the hour closures anymore. So it's going to be more and more traffic going out to the West Coast. And yeah, if we can pursue this through the UBCM and go forward as a united group, I think it would hopefully spur things on a little bit to get funding. So thank you for that.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Dr. McNabb, please go ahead.
Just a bit of a point of order that I'm at least having trouble hearing people are around the table because they're not speaking into the microphone. I don't know if anybody else is, or it's just my ever degrading ears. Thank you.
Okay, it might be the actual microphone. Can you hit yours, Dr. Cote?
Hello. Test.
Yeah, it's just when they're speaking to you and versus speaking to the microphone. So,
oh, okay. I might have missed one of them not turning their microphone on, but I did.
No, the microphone's on. They're just speaking away from it. That's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Thanks.
I look like a hippie version of Kramer, that business guy. Sorry, I'm just looking at myself, and it's like the rolled up sleeves and the, yeah, okay. Okay, that being said, I think the only other thing I'd like to pursue is potentially a conversation with, I don't know who, probably the municipal minister or the local government minister regarding just inclusive governance, and just checking in regards to that. I am interested in what it will take for First Nations to qualify for like the Municipal Insurance Association, as well as Municipal Finance Authority. We know that there's a high bar to achieve there, but if we're going to actually do this right, at least at Huit, we want to do the work to gain the confidence to be brought into that, because we don't see the First Nations Finance Authority being a route that we're taking or we can take, because we're just not getting the responsiveness from the feds in the way that we like. I know that we have representatives here. It's just, how do we start the conversation? How do we keep the province informed? That may not be a meeting, but it might be. But those are interests on our end at the very least. Dr. Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to talk to the Minister of Health. I've got concerns. I just don't have answers and I don't know how to move forward. But I'm hearing concerns about youth and families coming out of COVID and the lack of hope. So it's very distressing to hear this. Came from one of my fire department members who's connected with the high school, and he just came forward with some comments that are very distressing. And I'd really like to know what local governments can do moving forward with mental health issues to help our communities, because I think that's what we're here for. But what can we do? And it has the Minister of Health or the province, any ministries coming forward with any suggestions or help for local governments to be able to address these issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Cote. I think that's a very good idea. I think talking to Minister Malcolmson, I think, is the Minister for Mental Health, and I think it's like right below the Health Minister. So both or Sheila would probably be good, because she's former local government as well. So that might be a good conversation to have. I've heard the same things. I've heard the same things from school staff and the RCMP. And so these are things that are common across a lot of households in the Alberni Valley and in Huit territory, and probably beyond, honestly speaking. So I think this is going to be a commonality across a lot of places, and coupled with inflation and, you know, the energy prices spiking and that sort of thing, this is something that's going to affect people's mental health. And I think we don't underline the effect that the economic situation has. You can't get healthy if you're not secure, right? So, Dr. McNabb, I see you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's, I mean, the approach that needs to be taken, I think, is more one of the government offering a picture of the province in a very positive way. I mean, we're seeing from a business level that wages are at a level that is historic, and being able to hire people is at one of its lowest levels. So it's because people are not applying for positions for some reason or another, because the people are out there, but they're just not looking for employment. So I think it's a strategy more than it is a kind of throw money at it kind of thing or something. I mean, it's I would suggest that the Minister of Economics kind of position would be helpful in that, as well as Ministry of Health, because I suspect that it is a depression in a soon-to-be depressed economy. So, but it's heading that way for a lot of reasons, and people are maybe looking at it pessimistically, that is really causing part of the problem. I mean, the market and the ability to supply employment is really quite good. But if it continues in the directions that it's going, it won't be. So it's it's something we need to discuss and have a set of wheels underneath, that's for sure.
Thank you for that, Director McNabb. I think this is something that we do need to have a discussion about, because I would very much like to know what they're doing to understand the issue, because I think everything we've said is credible, but we don't know exactly why people aren't going back to work. And is it because the folks who are close to retirement have decided to retire early, or is it other things as well? So having a conversation here first and deciding how we're going to approach it, because honestly, I might just want to see information in regards to what's going on with the labor market, so that business leaders can see the information as it's been collected and perhaps identify solutions in that way. So I think that's the Minister for Jobs, Economic Recovery, and something else. And I think it's Ravi Tolan. So we could put ourselves on the agenda for that somewhere. Okay. Yeah, try the volume on the mic. Okay. Testing. Is that okay? Better? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Janice. I assume that's Janice. Oh, okay. Thank you, George. Okay, any further comments or questions? I don't think this is the last kick at the can, but yeah, let's think of what's going on in the province and how we interact with them. Dr. Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you. During our discussion, I had some time. I'm going to jump back to the insurance issue to pull up a couple documents. And I would just like maybe, and this might be a conversation between Director Cote and I, or if anybody else has any insight. The Agriculture Development Committee had, or the Farmers Institute last year had sent an email to the Ministry of Finance. And essentially the response from the Ministry of Finance was, insurance goes in cycles and costs can be higher and lower. And we're seeing more increased costs across the board, not just agriculture, and gave contact information for some federal contacts to try talk to them to see if there was any federal help that could eat like with the insurance companies. And from a meeting we had this year from the Ministry of Agriculture, after we had chatted with them about the insurance issues on farms, the Ministry of Agriculture published a document of how to prepare to meet with your insurance provider. For example, reviewing your current policy, being prepared to share your risk management practices, essentially like how to prep to talk to somebody. And I mean, in our meetings that we've had, both those responses are not helpful. And that's where I'm coming from with, we need to talk to somebody. The responses from both ministries have not been helpful. And if there is direction of which one to pursue further with this issue for a meeting.
Before we go to Director McNabb, I'm just going to throw something out there. Maybe the approach is something different than do something. Maybe it's to come up with an answer that can circumvent the cycle of insurance. Maybe you take a page out of what First Nations do and you say, give farmers enough money to put together their own cooperative and go forward like that. Start with the island. It's easy enough. It's one geographic location. And then start from there and then go with it and see what happens. That's just one idea and maybe flawed in some way, shape, or form. But if we can set things up like ICE-T and other types of trusts, why can't the province provide seed money with the federal government in setting up an agricultural cooperative like the way that it used to be in the progressive era, I suppose, 20s, 30s. Director McNabb, go ahead.
So the provincial government has a perfect vehicle for doing this, and it's the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia. They could easily facilitate having ICBC have a agricultural wing. And I mean, if there had to be seed money to do it, it's all within their scope of influence. And so I think that that would be a really good discussion to have, is why doesn't ICBC take this on and deal with it in British Columbia? I'm sure that in other provinces, provincial corporations are part of the ag insurance picture.
Thank you, Director McNabb. I have Director Cote next.
Thank you. As an executive member on the Municipal Insurance Association Board of Directors, we're all about pooling. And this is something that Farmers Association could actually take on, is start a pool, an insurance pool. That is how MIA started, because of the need for insurance for leaky condos. So it's something that we could look at through the province, or UBCM would be the place to really start with that, and bring it forward at that point. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Director Cote. I think there's plenty for some sort of document to bring forward to the Minister of Agriculture and so on and so forth. Maybe in finance, both, get them both. And yeah, I think this is something that there are solutions for. Dr. McNabb, I really like the ICBC solution. It seems like it should be straight up the alley of the have an NDP government as well. So let's see what happens there. Thank you. So with that in mind, if there aren't any other items to discuss today, we do have a motion here in regards to the issues that we've discussed. Director McNabb, go ahead.
So I would move the motion.
All right, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Great discussion. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to item C, which is the Lakeshore Trail Extension Award. And Jenny, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. We are looking to award the next 1.2 kilometers of trail extension for Lakeshore Trail in Sprout Lake. We've issued a tender and we received 6 bids back for the project. The lowest bid, unfortunately, was disqualified due to not following the very prescriptive criteria for the tender. And the second lowest tender was Dennis Francoeur. The project budget is $130,000 and the tender price is $114,172. Staff are recommending that we award to this would be the lowest qualified bid, who is Dennis Francoeur. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll open it up. Any comments or questions? Please go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. I had asked staff to, at this time, if the parking lot at the Sprout Lake Landing, right at the end of the trail extension right now, was being considered, and it's not at this time. But I'd like the ability to actually look into the cost of that. There was it's not an agreement, but information came back from Ministry of Transportation as to what it would take for that parking lot to be built. And I guess ownership transferred to, or at least transferred to the regional district. And I haven't been able to locate that at this time, but I'm still looking to be able to do that, to bring it back. And I'm wondering if we could add this onto the contract, but as a separate, not part of the grant. So that would be my question.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Through the chair, we can definitely look at that. This is just the next section of Lakeshore Trail extension. So we'll be working on the next project after that. And so I think that it might be easiest if we look at what is the sort of like what's the next step for the Lakeshore Trail, and look at incorporating any additional work into the next section that we work on, if that's okay. I'll also look in to see what the Ministry of Transportation communication is, if we have any information on that, and get some rough cost estimates, sort of just pre-project planning stuff.
Thank you. I know that we've had problems with the trail development that we have with parking issues. So creating further trail without creating the needed parking also is on my mind. But I'd like to make the motion at this time.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roberts. Okay. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, and thank you, Jenny. That brings us to item D, the annual operating agreement for BC Transit and the ACRD. Eddie, thank you. Eddie, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're looking for approval for the execution of the 2022-2023 annual operating agreement between BC Transit and the ACRD. A couple highlights of this agreement is that the federal and provincial governments will once again be kicking in Safe Restart money to the amount of $19,876 for the 22-23 fiscal year. Some other good news is that passenger trips are trending upwards. Since COVID, we saw 12,129 total trips in the 21-22 fiscal, as compared to 6,323 over 2021. So it's good to see getting back close to pre-COVID levels. So staff does recommend the approval of the agreement, and the costs are supported by the Alberni Valley Custom Transit portion of the 22-26 financial plan. And I can take any questions.
Thank you. Oh, Daniel, supplemental, go ahead.
I'm just going to add one supplemental. I know that there was former discussion around the term municipality in the agreement that's there. So that's something that we will look to address next year. But at this time, it's their standard wording. And so for us to look at altering that, in our view, would just be an unnecessary delay for now, but it's not off our radar. It's something that is, we prefer to see local government or regional district as it's more appropriate to us.
Thank you for that. I mean, they can just throw it in an interpretation clause within the agreement too. So that's neither here nor there. Thank you for that information. Is the pre-COVID level, is it 14 or 16,000? I can't remember.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Pre-COVID level passenger rides, we were at 15,914 in the 19-20 fiscal year.
All right, thank you for that. That's good context. Okay, I didn't see someone's hand, but I saw someone's hand. Dr. Cote and then Dr. Knapp. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I had asked for BC Transit to come to the board and do a presentation and with numbers. And I'd really like to thank Mr. Kunderman for providing me with the information that I asked for the ridership for Sprout Lake. So for 2021, there was a total of 390 passenger trips provided. And I believe those are one way. So that's great, because in the past there was, in 1 year, there was only 13 trips. And I figured it out to about $799 one way. So I'm really happy to see the increase in ridership, but I still would like to see BC Transit come to the board. And I'm not sure, I heard from someone from the hospital that was making an assumption, I'd say, that she said that people at Sprout Lake weren't even asking for the rides because they didn't think that they could get them. They had been refused in the past, so they weren't stepping up now. So just like to follow up with that in my newsletter, and there may be an increase in ridership. Thank you to Mr. Kunderman.
All right, thanks for that. That brings us to Director McNabb.
So I move that the Albany-Claycott Regional District Board of Directors approve execution of the 2022-2023 annual operating agreement between BC Transit and the ACRD local government.
You do have a seconder. Thank you, Director Cote. I think the only thing I'd like to contemplate over the next year is just what would it take for, say, residents of Sprout Lake to speak up, and what would it take for them to use it more, right? It always seems like transit should be thought of as a service that if we want it to be successful, we should convince BC Transit to invest more so that people are more willing to use it. which is kind of the opposite of like a business model, I suppose, because it's a service model. But the way that I see people saving because of gas is through using transit. Like ideally, people dropping a car for the most part, right? Because of car payments and insurance as well as gas. Knowing that Sprout Lake may not be the best example of that because you're far away from a lot of the amenities, but if we could increase ridership at Sprout Lake, then that might mean that we're doing the right things for other places as well. Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. In recent past, we did have a study for a type of paratransit to Sprout Lake, which caused a bit of disturbance between the city and Sprout Lake residents. So we pulled back, and really the transit that's being offered should be for all rural areas, not just for Sprout Lake. And BC Transit was supposed to come back with another option and getting some community input. So maybe at our AVIC or at our UBCM meeting, we should mention that not just the West Coast, but let's bring that AV transit plan coming back again in the near future. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Any further comments? Dr. McNabb, please go ahead.
So, I mean, it should be recognized that custom transit is just that. It's not public transit, and that people have to register for and be accepted as a client for the custom transit. So there is a criteria for that. And so, you know, if people are not registering, then they cannot call up custom transit and say, you know, I need a ride to my doctor. They have to be pre-registered. And we did put on an extra bus a couple of years ago, which you know was probably part of the reason that Sprout Lake's picture has improved, because previously they were having trouble facilitating the longer ride to Sprout Lake because of the number of buses that they actually had. So it's yes, the encouragement for people that need custom transit to register, it should be out there, and the way to do that should be out there. It's pretty simple, but it's not public transit, so let's not confuse that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Director Cote?
Thank you. I'm not confusing it. I am saying that it was a paratransit service, which would take some of the custom transit away from the custom transit and put it into the paratransit. So it would be a bus that people with disabilities would be able to take, rather than just a regular bus. Thanks.
Yeah, I think Director McNabb was helping me by being nice about it. So I think he knew you knew. With that in mind, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you for humoring me there. That brings us to item E, which is bylaw F1106-1, amendment to Long Beach Airport Water System Rates and Regulation bylaw. All right, Jenny, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. We brought a detailed report to the West Coast Committee discussing the water rates for the Long Beach Airport. We currently have about 10 users on the system, and the water rates are $40 a month, with details a little bit different if you're metered or not. And we compared local neighboring water systems, and we see that the rates are significantly lower. So we are recommending an increase starting July 1st to $40 a month, and then a stepped rate, which will increase it to $60 and $80 in subsequent years. We also are recommending some rates for the cost to cover the cost for installing new services, for emergency shutoffs, and basically standardizing some of the service fees that we already have in our other water systems. So the committee supported those changes, and we prepared a bylaw which is attached, which will allow those changes to be put into place, and we're looking for those to be effective as of July 1st. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any comments or questions or motion? Director Roberts, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have any questions, but Yes, we did review this in depth at the West Coast Committee meeting, and I believe it was unanimous. Everybody was in favor of it because we're sort of falling behind somewhat. So I'd like to make a recommendation that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to the bylaw cited as Long Beach Airport Water System Rates and Regulation Amendment Bylaw number F1106-1, 2022.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McNabb. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. You want to keep going?
Sure. Give second reading that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give second reading to the bylaw cited as Long Beach Airport Water System Rates and Regulations Amendment Bylaw number F1106-1, 2022.
And seconded by, thank you, Director Kemps. All right, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Okay, third, that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give third reading to the bylaw cited as Long Beach Airport Water System Rates and Regulation Amendment Bylaw number F1106-1, 2022.
There, seconded, please. Thank you, Director Steer. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. And I think one more on the other side.
Yes. That the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors adopt the bylaw cited as Long Beach Airport Water System Rates and Regulation Amendment Bylaw number F1106-1, 2022.
Okay, seconded by Director Steer. Thank you. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, that brings us to item F, which is a request for decision regarding Sortenville West Coast Landfill construction delay, project implementation options. Who is that? Paulo, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So last week at the West Coast Committee, we brought in some options to the committee to discuss go forward on the West Coast landfill construction regarding specifically the delay. As you know, we brought in bids, came in high. We wound up going back out, looking at revising design and retendering into two separate pieces, civil works and building and infrastructure to hopefully improve the pool of folks that would be coming into each of these different types of work. And then with that, that takes into account the coordination of three-stream rollout on the West Coast and try to keep everything online for November, our original target date. So we looked at several options of essentially either accepting organics at some area on the landfill, taking the organics and hauling it over to Earthland and Sea in the Alberni Valley, or delaying rollout altogether until the full organics facility was completely built by what's going to be now likely spring of 2023. So at the end of the day, the most cost-effective option wound up being keeping the material at the West Coast landfill. We can do some windrowing there, work with the operators, and have the ability to accept the organic material that comes in when rollout happens as previously scheduled. So the recommendation sits before everybody here. I don't really have any other big highlights, so I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can make the motion if there's no questions that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve proceeding with the fall 2022 implementation of the West Coast three-stream collection program and create an alternate tipping location at the West Coast landfill to collect organics material as an interim solution due to project construction delays.
Excellent. Seconded by Director Roberts. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to the service agreement for the West Coast Sort and Go to include Oquiyat and Yukisisat First Nations. I think it's still you, Paulo, so if you want to introduce it, please go ahead.
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So following on the West Coast theme, we've been working with the staff with Tloquit First Nation, Uthulathat government. I hope I got that name right. But we're looking at the provision of three-stream curbside collection waste in their community. So That's been part of the pilot piece for the three-stream rollout. We'd be looking at onboarding the two communities earlier in September to feel out all the kinks and take the CART system into account. We brought this over to the committee a while back here, so it is sitting before you for recommendation. We do have two service agreements attached there in their final draft form for your consideration, and that covers off the cost piece as well as the waste education piece that we have going forward, how we'll work together with the groups. I don't have any other key pieces, so again, I'll open it up to questions.
Director Bodner, please go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. What I'd like to know is in Port Alberni, we have a depot. We can put our glass and electronics and styrofoam, etc. So what would be available for them out on the West Coast if they have this recycle curbside collection?
The curbside material would be going to the one of the two private depots, if you're talking about specifically the recyclables. So when Three Stream rolls out, in a similar manner to the way it rolled out here in the Alberni Valley, it'll go with recycling, will go to the private depots, and the organic material would be coming to the West Coast landfill, as would the curbside garbage. That's how that works. Residents in the West Coast area still have the ability to bring in recyclables to the actual depots themselves as a walk-in. Those are the options that they have available to them. I don't know if that answers your question.
I was concerned about the unrecyclables, like the glass and the styrofoam. I mean, we have a depot in Port Alberni where we take that to. What do they have out there?
Thank you for that clarification, Director. Yes, the private depots are able to take that material, the glass, the styrofoam, and the third material is the soft plastic / overwrap material. They enjoy a contract with Recycle BC in the same manner that we do directly with our depot in Alberni Valley. That's how it's comparable. So those are the options that they do have.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, any further comments or questions? If not, would someone like to move the agreement?
I'll move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve entering into a service agreement with Cloquet First Nation, Ucluelet government for the provision of three-stream curbside collection of waste in the communities of Taku, Essowisto, and Tyastanis.
Thank you, Director Steer. I'm sorry, I didn't see you're unmuted. Did you have a comment?
No.
Oh, okay. Can we have a seconder, please? Thank you, Director Roberts. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, that brings us to, Paulo, stick around, I suppose. West Coast Collection of Waste Materials Regulation and Charge Bylaw R1036. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just madly scrolling down here as we go. Bear with me. Okay. So you've got before you draft waste collection bylaw. So what this is covering off, and again, it's that West Coast theme. It is it's taken into account the introduction of the new three-stream program. It's providing ability to put requirements around not just where waste goes in the streams, but also how people secure their waste to reduce the onset of conflict attacks with animals, between humans, etc. Secure your waste, all of those good things. So I'll just go through just kind of the quicker highlights here. The ability to onboard multifamily strata units, specifically bare land stratas, if they are deemed serviceable. Anybody lacking curbside program, the larger facilities and all that sort of thing that may be outside of that, to provide a plan on how they manage their waste. Again, to be able to segregate those materials, whether it's, to borrow an older term, the unrecyclable garbage material, the recyclables themselves, and the organic material, how they're divvying up that material there and able to feed into the ultimate three streams we're trying to divide up. Current collection fees for the service premises are still reflected in this bylaw at $125 per year. That is until three stream rolls out. After that time, the new service fees, the new three-stream collection service fees will be effective as of November 1st, 2022. And there's a Schedule A in there as well for your consideration. Those are the big highlights. So again, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, please? Or motions, I suppose. Go ahead, Director. Go ahead, Director Steer.
Yeah, sorry, I've lost audio there for a second. That the ACRD Board of Directors give first reading to the bylaw cited as West Coast Waste Materials Regulation and Charges Bylaw number R1036 2022.
Thank you. Do we have a second? All right, thank you, Director Bodner. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried.
And I'll move second reading of the bylaw.
Thank you, Director Steer, seconded by Director Johnson. Further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
And I'll move third reading.
Seconded by Director Roberts. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
And finally, that the ACRD Board of Directors adopt the bylaw cited as a West Coast Waste Materials Regulation and Charges Bylaw number R1036 2022.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Bodner. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. All right, that brings us to item I, bylaw R1021-8, garbage and recycling materials collection amendments. Paulo, Iron Man here, please keep going.
I'll go get quick so that you don't get tired of me here. So, so spinning back to the Alberni Valley, this is an amendment for bylaw 1021-8 for garbage and recycling material collection. And so just going right back through, as we've implemented 3-stream in both the Alberni Valley back in 2021 and the West Coast ongoing, as we've heard. We're making those appropriate changes to focus the existing bylaw, 1021, to focus strictly on what is remaining, and that is the rural recycling area for Beaver Creek, Sushot, and Hoopachesset. Amendments to this bylaw include the removal of Schedule A, the garbage collection fees, replacing the Schedule B, recycling collection service areas with the new ones, focusing strictly again on the service area that applies here, and removing the original Schedule C garbage collection service areas that had referred to the West Coast. And this is again in line with bylaw 1036 that we just adopted here. I don't have any other additional pieces, just a note here just on the recycling service. Still remains that the ACRD funds this service annually with a combination of $56,807 from Recycle BC program and the additional $35,341 from landfill tipping fees. And that's it for that bylaw. So again, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Director McNabb, please go ahead.
So I would move the bylaw R1021-8 garbage and recycling materials collection amendment. So I guess that goes down to the next page here. That the ACRD Board of Directors give first reading to bylaw cited as bylaw R1021-8 garbage and recycling materials collection amendment 2022.
Thank you for that. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McCarthy. Any comments or questions?
Just a point of order. Do we have to rescind the first one? The previous bylaw?
No, I think this just is added and
just amending. Yeah. Okay. So
Okay.
I would.
Oh, sorry. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. You can just say second reading now, I think.
Yes, second reading.
Yeah, seconded by? Someone? Thank you, Director Bodner. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried.
And I would move third reading.
Thank you. Second, thank you, Director McCarthy. Seconded. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
And And one comment I'd like to just sort of have clarification on, the new program that we just talked about a couple of meetings ago with regards to the ocean waste. How is this being funded, and what's the impact to our local facility?
Paula, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Director McNabb. The ocean waste facility, the ocean waste material is still a pilot project. So with that, there is a pilot fee being applied to every single ton of material that comes in. Currently, I'm just going back to my memory banks just now. For the first year of the pilot, it's brought in approximately 3% of the equivalent annual waste into the AVL landfill. And on the West Coast side, it's approximately 2% of the waste stream, as it were. They are separating out a lot of the material through a separate agreement that goes through Ocean Legacy to process plastics, but there's still a chunk of that that does come in. Funding, again, is being covered off through the tipping fee, the pilot tipping fee.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of concerned that what we're doing is burying a lot of this plastic material that currently isn't recycled because it's degraded, and that there may be opportunities to actually store it versus burying it, or at least segment it so we can revisit it at a later date when it is usable. The microplastics getting into the leachates and other things like that is something I'm kind of concerned about. And if we've got opportunity down the line to deal with it, it'd be better than just putting in with the other non-recyclable waste. So I would move adoption of bylaw R1021-8, garbage and recycling materials collection amendment 2022.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Beckett. Further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Great. Item J, request for decision regarding Lot 20 Plan VIP 939. And I'm going to stop reading. Go ahead, Mike.
So this is a recommendation to place a notice on title for a property at 5141 Kingston Road. This property is in the Beaufort electoral area. There is currently a structure that is being occupied without a building permit. The owner was provided information regarding the building permit process. Follow-up letters were sent out as per the attached staff reports. The owner has not contacted ACRD staff about this at all. And Section 57 of the Community Charter sets out the procedures for a building inspector to recommend that the board place a notice on title. And staff have followed the ACRD's notice on title procedure, which is attached to the report. And recommend that the board pass the resolution to register the notice on title. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Director Roberts, go ahead.
So through the chair, to Mr. So this is placed on title, and does that restrict the sale of the property? What exactly does it do?
So it's a notice on title just so that anybody who is looking at the title, or a title is required for any purposes such as financing or sale, is aware that there's building infraction. So this is one of the tools for enforcement. It doesn't preclude other forms of enforcement, but it just makes anybody that is a future property buyer or lender, for example, aware that there is contraventions of the building bylaw.
So yeah, I understand that. So that doesn't do anything to preclude the existing person living there or whatever to stay where they are without further constraint. Is that correct?
No, I mean, that would require further enforcement action.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further comments? Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I have concerns about this. No building permit is now required, but we don't know the safety of this building. So simply putting a notice on title is kind of problematic for the safety of the community, in my opinion, but thank you.
Director Erg, I have a question because I don't have my computer up right now and I don't remember. Is this a property where a secondary house or something of that nature would be permitted if they went through and got the building permit and so on and so forth? Is it zoned to allow for that sort of thing?
I think on this property, the building would be allowed. In this case, they're just have not responded to staff and have not applied for the building permit that's required. It is the notice on title process is part of the process that we can follow, and I think it's an important step where people are not not following the proper process and getting a building permit, so that it notifies potentially future buyers or others that there is problems on the property. We certainly can do to move forward with more enforcement, if that's what the board wishes to do, but it's an important first step in these files.
Thank you. We'll go to Director Bodner and then Director Cote.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify then, if this person has not responded, or in any of these instances, because there's more coming, if they haven't responded and they just say, oh, well, because they have no intention of selling anyway. So how long would it take, or is there a next step, and when would that happen if they still didn't respond?
So there's also a process to remove the notice on title. So it would require that the property be brought into compliance, that a building permit is applied for, and issue, and all of the requirements of the building permit are met, and the building permit's issued, and occupancy permits are granted. And then there is fees associated with the removal of the notice on title that are paid to the regional district. So there's no timeline attached to this. The other alternative, or the next step, would be legal action.
So they could actually live there for years in a building that's not been approved.
Yes, they potentially could.
Thank you.
Director Cote?
Thank you. Two questions actually. Is this a recent bill? And it seems to me that we talked about building permit costs, and this would be related to this build. If it's a recent one, that the cost of the building permit would be 2 times the regular amount. Thank you.
Yes. So if and when the property owner applies for a building permit, before that permit can be issued, the fees would be double the costs, as per the current bylaw. I don't know the date of the when this building was constructed. Staff became aware of it, and the report outlines the time frame around that. But the building permit fees don't relate to when they built it. It relates to when they apply for a building permit. So certainly double the building permit fees would apply as well.
Okay, thank you. Daniel, please go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike, but I think at the time of application is also when the building code applies. So when we talk about potential impacts on costs to the builder, if they can live there for 10 years, yes, but when they finally have to bring the building into compliance, they're likely going to face much higher costs as a result of a higher standard and a different code.
Yes, that's my understanding, is that the building code of the day, if somebody applied in 2022, the 2022 building code applies. If this was 5 years from now, the building code that is in place 5 years from now would apply.
Okay. So in regards to when any actions, legal or otherwise, are triggered beyond what we're talking about right now, is that complaints based, or is that something that's as soon as we're aware, we automatically do it?
With building, especially when it's being occupied, if the building inspectors notice something that's being built, they will investigate. I mean, normally the first step is to contact the owner or leave a business card, at the property saying that this may require a building permit. Please contact the ACRD staff. So that's always our first approach is to provide people the opportunity to make the application, and we determine, if a building permit's required. In this case, again, all of those steps were followed, and then the notice on title procedures were followed as far as following up with letters and notifying the property owner and providing them the opportunity to come in and speak to the board.
Thank you for that. Director McNabb, I notice you're unmuted. Did you have a comment?
No, I just, I think this is an approach that's appropriate, and next steps will be next steps. Thank you.
Would you like to move the motion?
We'll let the Director Shannon take off.
No, we're not there
No,
yet.
I'm here.
She can move the motion. It's in her belly wag.
Yeah. Please.
Okay, oh, nice. I gotta find it. Okay. Move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors result. Oh, hold on. Are we doing lot 20 first? Because I know there's two. The next one's Beaufort as well.
It's item J, so it's the.
Sorry, I'm not on the agenda. I'm down on page 165. Is that
Yeah.
the right one? Okay.
165 is the one, yeah.
Making sure I'm not jumping the gun here. That the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors resolve to register a notice on the title to lot 20, Plan VIP 939, District Lot 167, Alberni Land District, 5141 Kingston Street, as per section 57 of the Community Charter.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McNabb. Okay, any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. And now the next item. Oh, Director Roberts, please go ahead first.
Through the chair to Mr. So the taxation on this property through BC assessment may not include the building or whatever has been built there. I wonder if BC assessment should be advised, and would they take any action on that? Thank you.
We certainly can do that. I do know BC assessment as part of the process also does site visits. So in this particular situation, I'm not sure if they're aware of the buildings on site or not, but we certainly can notify them.
Thank you for that.
Okay, Mike, do you want to introduce the next item, the lot 11?
So this is the second of the three notice on title recommendations that we have on the agenda today. So this is for a property at 5160 Wednesbury Street. Again, building construction and structures without building permits were observed on the property. The owner was again provided with the opportunity to apply for a building permit. That didn't happen, and staff followed the notice on title procedures that the regional district has, and again recommending that a notice on title be registered. I'm happy to answer questions about this one.
Director Shannon? You
Oh,
are.
not even anymore. Okay. Okay, I would move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors resolve to register notice on title to lot 11, Plan VIP 939, District Lot 167, Alberni Land District, 5160 Wednesbury Street, as per section 57 of the Community Charter.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Baldner. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. And item L, Mike, please go ahead.
Yes, so this is the third one. So this is for a property at 10986th Avenue at Salmon Beach. And again, there was a structure that staff have made numerous attempts to provide building permit information and to have the owner apply for building permits. That hasn't happened. And again, the staff report sort of talks about when this was initiated, and it's been a number of years. And again, the notice on title procedure has been followed, and staff recommend that a notice on title be registered on this property as well. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Director McNabb, please go ahead.
So I'm just interested in the liability to Salmon Beach itself when there's a structure that's not got a permit. I mean, it wouldn't be insurable. So, if it caught on fire or exploded or some other thing like that, the impact could filter to the rest of the site. So I'm wondering if there's any possibility through the I don't know how they're actually formed, strata or whatever it is, if there's any possibility to apply pressure from that angle.
Go ahead, Mike, and then we'll go to Director Roberts and Director Cote.
Sure. And so just with respect to Salmon Beach, the properties are all fee simple. There is no strata at Salmon Beach, so it's the same the same ownership situation as the two previous properties that we dealt with. And I don't have information around the insurance, individual insurance for the property owners. I would note that one of the reasons that staff are bringing these recommendations forward is sort of out of the due diligence to make sure that this is that any other property owners or anybody who have other interests in the property are aware that there are infractions and that they haven't been resolved. So it also relates to the liability of the regional district. So again, hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, Ish.
Sure, thanks for that, Mike. I'm sure that the Salmon Beach Committee, the owners out there are aware of this, but they have no opportunity to address these individuals that are non-conforming. So again, as Mr. Erd mentioned, these are all fee simple lots. Therefore, it's at the discretion of the Alberta Clayoquot Regional District to deal with these matters. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Director Cote withdrew. So any motions?
I'll make the motion.
All right, Director Roberts moves the motion as presented. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Good timing, Director Minions. We're getting into planning. So. Okay, that brings us to item 9.1 in regards to planning matters. So this is for electoral area directors. And before we begin, Mike, do you and Alex just switch off which days you do for planning, or does it come down to which items are on the agenda?
Sometimes it's what items, sometimes it's what kind of who's got what going on. So Alex is busy preparing for all of the APC meetings that we've been having regarding the zoning bylaw. So a lot of these were ones I'm responsible for and familiar. So I just thought it would be fairer if I presented, but we do try to take turns.
That sounds merciful. Thank you. And please go ahead on item A, Mike.
Yes, so this is a temporary use permit.
Okay. And I got to kick myself out. One moment. Don't start yet.
Sorry. Thanks.
So please go ahead. It's now my instruction. I'm not Chair Jacks.
Oh, thanks, Director McNabb. So this is a temporary use permit 006. This is the Hawaiian First Nations group of businesses for a property at 390 Grappler Road. The board considered this application as the first step in the process at the last board meeting. This is a temporary use permit for staff accommodations. There was a previous application, a temporary use permit that had expired, and this permit has some new new conditions in it as being treated as a new temporary use permit. The Advisory Planning Commission reviewed this application on May 26th and also passed a motion to concur with the staff recommendation. I wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. The applicant at the APC meeting agreed to additional screening from the road with a solid fence, and that's been also built into the temporary use permit that the board's considering. And I want to note that one email was received this morning, and that's part of the late agenda. So there was concerns expressed in the email. And I wanted to note, specifically around the septic filing, that the ACRD does have a current septic filing. The applicants have their building permit information with our building inspector, and the building permit, cannot be issued until this temporary use permit is issued, if it is. And I also wanted to note that I had conversations with the CEO of the HFN group of businesses, and he's assured me that they want to make sure that they follow the proper process to make sure that all of the conditions of the temporary use permit are followed, including the fencing and screening, but also around making sure that the quiet times are observed, and having somebody available to respond to any complaints that the neighbors have. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we have Director Beckett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you back to Mr. Erg. So with respect to the letter from Mr. Solomon, there's a couple things that I'm looking for some form of explanation, as well as perhaps some communication back to Mr. Solomon. But he makes the accusation that the original TUP 18008 never did comply, that they went ahead and they never did comply with that. That's a concern that I think is valid. Whether or not it's accurate, that's a concern that's valid. And then at the end of his correspondence, he's essentially suggesting that he's looking for two things. One, that there's an appropriate contact number so that the community could reach out if there were problems. And secondly, verifying that the septic system is viable for 13 people. Mike, you go on to say that the building code application would be addressed after a temporary use permit is granted by the board. And if that is what I heard you say, to me it doesn't make sense that we would issue a temporary use permit prior to having compliance with any building code requirements and or VHA septic field inspections. It seems like we'd be putting the cart before the horse. So if you could you respond to those comments / questions? And I know it's a mouthful.
No, fair enough. And I think those are good and fair questions. This has been a longstanding file, and there were some issues and problems with the first temporary use permit. So I'll just back it up and just explain a temporary use permit. In essence, a temporary use permit is like temporary zoning. So it's going to it allows for this use, and then the building permits follow. So originally the owners never got the building permit finalized for the under the previous temporary use permit, and which expired. So they do have that building permit application in. It's been reviewed by the building inspector. It's ready to be issued, I understand. But process-wise, the temporary use permit needs to be in place first. That's where I also mentioned the septic filing is up to date. I just checked the copy of it this morning, so that was issued in 2021, and so that's there. So the septic filing process requires a wastewater practitioner to design and install the septic field. And I understand, again, that's ready, and that's something that we require for the building permit as well. The other note was around a contact if there's problems. So the temporary use permit itself, which is on page 184, sorry, and I'm just going to it now, requires some information about the quiet. So item 3 in the proposed temporary use permit talks about emergency management and security policies are to be available for review by ACRD staff and enforced by the applicant. There shall be a posted quiet time of 10 p.m. And then item 4 is contact information for the owner or caretaker, and a copy of the TUP must be visible in a public location. And that is for any members of the public. If there's a problem, there's a posted phone number to contact. So that would has to be available and posted on site if there's any concerns or issues. And then the other part I'd already mentioned was the next one was about the screening from the property. So a caretaker contact information will be posted on site, and that's available. So especially in off hours when the ACRD is closed, and that's the intent of that.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Chair, if I could continue then just for some additional clarification. And thanks, Mike, for that explanation. Just confirming that there is no septic system installed as of today. They've got plans, but they don't have it installed?
I understand that there is a septic. Sorry, and I didn't have time to check into all of this, but I understand that there is a septic system in place. And then the filing, I think, was just confirming if there was upgrades needed. But there is a septic field in place, I understand.
Okay. So I guess lastly, I am hoping that staff will respond back to Mr. Solomon. I don't necessarily agree with his comment that it is not of value to the community. I think it is, given the intent to house the road workers. Let's get that road done. But I am concerned, and I guess my expectations would be that we're going to work very closely with the applicant to ensure that valid concerns of the community are addressed. And with that, I would make the motion that the temporary use permit application memorandum and permit that the Board of Directors issue temporary use permit TUP 22006.
Seconded.
Okay, got a mover and a seconder or anything else on this? Okay, all those that are able to vote in favor, all in favor, we got any of our directors that are opposed. So there, we got you too. Okay, I appreciate the motion's carried. Thank you very much. And we'll invite Director Jack back in the room.
We are just on our way to get him. It'll be a moment.
There a food truck in the parking lot or something?
No, there isn't. But I did want to tell you that we don't have any maintenance going on around the building today. I thought you'd appreciate that.
Yes, it seems that very often on Wednesday when we have our meeting, we also have yard maintenance going on at the same time. It's good not to have that.
Director Jack has asked that you carry on. He's taking the bio break.
Okay. Well, carrying on then. So now we have the next one that is a Sprout Lake Landing issue. So it says Alex, but I'm suspecting that's Mike.
Yeah, I'm happy to present this, Director McNabb. So I just, so this is a rezoning application for 10695 Lakeshore Road. So this is the Sprout Lake Landing property. And just as a bit of background, the board had originally reviewed the public hearing minutes and public hearing report at the April 13th board meeting. At that time, the minutes and report were received, and the bylaws were deferred, and the applicant the application was deferred to provide the opportunity for the applicant to provide additional information if they wanted. The applicants have elected not to submit any new information, and the applicant has agreed also at the public hearing had agreed to limit the number of cottages to 15. I would note that the OCP supports tourist accommodation expansion in this area, and that Ministry of Transportation is the agency responsible for traffic management. And I would just note, as far as this bylaw specifically being within 800 meters of a controlled access highway, which is Highway 4, which is next to the Sprout Lake Landing and the hotel and that there. Because of that, after third reading, before any bylaw can be considered, the ministry must review and sign off on the bylaw. And I am happy to answer any questions regarding this.
Okay, I'd just like to give notice that I did receive 2 phone calls with regards to this project, and I immediately cut them off at the knees and said that I cannot talk about it. So while I did receive 2 phone calls, I didn't receive any information with regards to this rezoning. So, Director Cote?
Thank you. Through this process with public hearing, we did hear from the community, and have noted concerns around road safety, traffic, on-site sewage concerns. There's water concerns, aspects of the building character, landscape, screening, and parking may be an issue as well. In reviewing the public hearing minutes and driving past the property, that it comes out on a blind corner over a hill with water on both sides, highway and a bridge access very close. At this time, I would make a recommendation that the board defeat bylaw P1436 and P1437. Thank you.
So is there any further comments with regards to that? I bet while this is a rural zoning issue, so it's restricted voting, everyone can certainly speak on it. So any comments, bring them forward. Alrighty, did we get a seconder to that motion? I'm sorry.
No, Mr. Chair, we do not.
Diane Bodner, Director Bodner's seconded the motion to deny the request. Any further comment on that? See, Director Jack is moving back in the room. I don't know if he's got a comment on it.
No comment.
So where we are is Director Cote has moved to deny the Sprout Lake Landing motion. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Okay, with that in mind, last call for comments. Dr. McNabb.
So I really think that denying this is a short-sighted view of what we need in our community. Accommodations at the lake and all around the valley and are in short supply. And to restrict the development part of it, where jobs are concerned and where investment is concerned, I think is inappropriate. And this person has bent over backwards in order to do the planning and commit to the moving from 20 to 15 sites. And in an area that in an OCP basis was previously, approved by the community, that area was that. And as far as the access egress is concerned, I mean, that's a decision for the ministry to make and make sure that it's appropriate to go back and forth onto Lakeshore Road, and onto the highway. So I don't agree with denying this. I think it should move forward, and that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I've thought hard and long about this, heard from the community quite strongly that they're not in favor of this development moving forward. And I support my community, and I drive past this location every day that I drive away from my home, and I have to go past this entranceway, which is absolutely unsafe. The community has spoken very loud about this particular location as being unsafe, and issues around sewage, highways. Highways look at things on paper. I don't know if they've had the opportunity to actually take a drive by. We fully support the store offering that's coming from there. The hotel has been very restrictive as far as community offering. They've put up no trespass gates, and it's not really been very supportive of the community in the past. The previous owner has now left, and I imagine things are going to be different. Maybe the new owners can come forward with a different proposal, but the one that's come forward at this time is not acceptable to my community. And there was many reasons that were stated within the public hearing minutes that made my decision quite clear. So I don't believe that this is going to be providing a lot of employment in the valley. I think that the store and the restaurant opening up more to the public would be more beneficial than trying to squeeze in 15 accommodations on a rock that has terrible access and really not very good septic. There's other, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cote. Any further comments? Dr. Minions, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I get that this is a hard decision, especially when there's pushback from community members. I think as well that change is hard, and there has not been a great deal of change on Sprout Lake and in that area. I think that staff have done a really good job of putting forward a thoughtful recommendation and communicating it very clearly through the report. And I just want to really support staff's recommendations. I know that I don't formally have a vote, but I believe very strongly in the Alberni Valley as a really important tourism destination. And I think that this type of development supports that. I also want to echo Director Cote's comments around the benefit that would be brought to the greater community by, the restaurant and store being opened up more frequently. But I think that this type of development will support that being practical from a business sense. And so there's value in, this supporting that as well. There has to be a business sense to everything that's done. So recognize Director Cote's concerns around the concerns that have come from her community, but I think this has benefit to the Valley as a whole. And I think it's an important application to move forward with. Thank you.
Okay. Any comment, Director Roberts?
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Back to Mr. Erg, I see that the application has reduced the number of units and that it has been confirmed that the registered on-site wastewater practitioner says that it is capable of it. Island Health to meet the requirements for a private water system, and to Sport Lake Fire Department to confirm adequate fire protection. Meeting the technical referral agency requires, does that include highways as far as egress and so on to the property? Thank you.
Yes, it does. So highways is always a referral agency that we refer to. What I'd mentioned before, because Highway 4 is adjacent to this property, there's also an additional requirement that the ministry has to approve any bylaw before it's adopted and after third reading. Thank you.
Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to refer back to the public hearing minutes and how many residents opposed this going forward. And it was given back. I gave the applicants the opportunity by sending this back, and they haven't made any changes. So in my opinion, there's nothing that's changed to approve this application going forward. So staff have been in contact with the applicants, and I asked for this to come back to the board, so that, because I feel that I made a mistake in the beginning by actually deferring it and not just defeating this application because of, was there a possibility of any change to make it more acceptable to the community, which I think that we should be listening to. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Director Cote. Last chance, any further comments? Dr. McNabb and then Director Shannon.
So the change from 20 units to 15 units, when did that occur?
Is that a mic question? Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, that was, they'd agreed to that at the public hearing. It's from that's what I recall.
Okay, Director Shannon.
Thank you. I was just going to note that the recommendation to go to 15 came from staff, from the public hearing, and the applicant agreed to it. My question is when you're talking about access, is there an opportunity to access off Highway 4 to this instead of Lakeshore Road?
If I may, that's ultimately a Ministry of Transportation issue,
Okay.
but I would say it's very, very unlikely. They like to have limited access points off of Highway 4, and then there's one already
Right.
there that accesses that road.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it. With that in mind, so this is all those in favor of the motion on the floor. It's 1, 2. Okay, all opposed. 1, 2, 3. Okay, motion defeated. Okay, so yes, I believe they do. Okay, is it understood that this was a motion to deny or to defeat the denial? That's correct? Yeah, already. Okay, so that leaves the floor empty. Would anyone like to fill it? Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. Very disappointed in the board not supporting the denial of this. This is not your community. This is my community. And I've heard from the residents of my area. And I'm sure that the ACRD is going to hear a lot of pushback from the residents of Sprout Lake This is a very dangerous situation. Creating a access right off of a blind corner and a bridge that comes off the highway. Yeah, very disappointed.
Thank you, Director Cote. Okay, so are there any other motions on the floor? Director McNabb, please go ahead.
Well, I mean, the only other motion we can actually make, I guess, is to move the bylaw. I mean, as far as the access and egress is concerned, I realize that that's a situation. That situation is one that's to be mitigated by the Ministry of Highways. If they choose to make it a stipulation that that the road be altered for this project, you know, that'll be their input, and the applicant would have to make those pay towards that, you know, probably together with the ministry to fix those situations. But I mean, the other road is 90 kilometers an hour, and the Sproat Lake Road is 50 kilometers an hour, the Lakeshore Road. So I would move that bylaw P1436, Sproat Lake Official Community Amendment Plan bylaw be read for a second time.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder? And then we'll go right to Director Cote. Seconder? Thank you, Director Shannon. And Director Cote, go ahead.
I'd like my votes registered.
Okay, we'll make sure that that's noted in the minutes. Director Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question again about when we're talking about this access point, because from my understanding, and maybe Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, is this is the property of Drinkwaters and Della's Cafe. There's a parking lot at Della's Cafe. Could that not, since that's already an access point, be used as a, I don't know the proper word for it, but go through there to access this other part of the property? Or is this, again, I'm getting ahead of myself and this is the province and the Ministry of Transportation?
Mike, go ahead.
Yes, I can. So any access permits would be, you know, ultimately issued by the Ministry of Transportation, because they have the jurisdiction over the roads and the access. I would note that there's a creek that goes through there, and there's a bridge. When you look at on page 190, there's shows a map of the area that's being rezoned, and so you can see there's a creek that runs through, and there's a bridge. So it would be difficult to have access from Della's, the cafe area that you're referring to.
Okay, I have Director Cote and then McNabb next.
Thank you. This property is dissected by the creek. There's a beaver dam there out on the lake, and they go through, and there's a pond in behind this property across on the other side of the highway, the big culvert going through. There's no way that you're going to be able to access across from the store area. Further, when the driveway to this piece of property isn't really, it's not really squared off here, but you come off of Lakeshore, as soon as you come across this bridge going across that creek, and then it's uphill, quite steep to this piece of property, which is all rock, where they have their septic. Further, if you keep going past this piece of property, there's another creek that goes to another pond. So it's got water on both sides that runs into Sproat Lake. There's no way that you can come in from the other side either. Doesn't really show it here, but it's a blind corner of a hill. So it's an extremely dangerous location to try to access off of. And it's all rock up on top where any kind of runoff goes down into those water creeks and catchments. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Cote. I think Director McNabb was next. Go ahead.
So can we move this to third reading and then have Highways give us their input on access egress?
Mike?
No, the board shouldn't receive new information other than what's required by legislation. So in this case, the Ministry of Transportation has to consider the bylaw, and there's a delegate, a staff person that has to sign off on it because of its proximity to the highway. And that would be the only information that the board could receive without having a second public, holding another public hearing.
Thank you. Are any?
So-
Go ahead,
So
Dirk.
my question is at third reading, we could get the highways input on whether or not access is appropriate or can be made appropriate.
I believe
my from what Mike has said, that's information that we can receive.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to. I'll clarify. So if no, the board cannot receive a report from highways on access because it would be new information before the bylaw is adopted.
Go ahead.
So if highways won't give a determination prior to third reading or prior to a public hearing, and we can't receive information once we move it past third reading, how the heck are we supposed to get this information? You know, I mean, maybe that's something staff needs to delve into. I mean, leave it sitting right where it is and get staff to clarify that. Because I think it's a pertinent piece of the puzzle, and it needs to be clarified.
Yeah, I think the way that it works is that the understanding between highways or the province and a lot of these agencies and local government is that we make the decision and then they make it work. Unless it doesn't work, then it starts over. So I think with the way that this goes, we wouldn't be able to do that without having to do a whole nother process. And so I think that's part of it. Yeah, any further comments here?
I am, I'm just looking to see at the referral agency comments from the minutes that the board received at the April 13th meeting, which I certainly can share that with you. I'm just going to find the just seeing if I can find that.
Okay, Director Cote, go ahead while Mike's doing that.
Thank you. So a question is, does Ministry of Transportation actually go to a location, or will they just look at this map and make calculations from that as far as their recommendation going forward? Because going on location is imperative to actually look at what the situation is. On Sprout Lake has narrow, winding, blind corner roads that are extremely dangerous all over the place. And this is no exception. This is actually more dangerous than a lot of other areas. It doesn't show you anything about the access to that piece of property coming in and out, how it will impede traffic coming from the bottom of the page going up towards the highway. There's a blind corner and a hill right there. You cannot see around that. And you start putting a couple of pedestrians on that road too, because people like to walk in this area. It's imperative that there's safety issues that are looked at this by our board, because somebody's going to get hurt for sure. There's been issues where our old Joe Van Bergen stood on the bridge and had a fire truck pass him on that bridge, and there was no room. And Ministry of Transportation put in a pedestrian bridge right there because of that safety issue. There's no room to get off the road in most of that along that area. the residents of Sprout Lake know that area, and they, in the public hearing minutes, they let us know exactly how they felt about this. And it seems to me that the board is not listening. Thanks.
Okay, so with that in mind now, Mike, are you able to get that information out? And is that relevant for going to a vote? Because we've been talking about this for a while
So
now.
I can certainly read the Ministry of Transportation referral response. That was part of the public hearing. So just it was MOTI has received the above referral and has the following response. The section of Lakeshore Road fronting the subject property is placed close to or on the property boundary, and as such adequate road right of way to support future maintenance of the road. As such has inadequate right of way to support future maintenance of the road infrastructure. MOTI would like to see a proposal from the applicant to accommodate this historical matter, and suggests that additional right of way be created under section 107 of the Land Title Act. A commercial access permit can also be obtained by the applicant, and in consultation with MOTI, a suitable access to the development can be designed. Once we have engaged in discussion with the applicant, MOTI will be fully supportive of this proposal.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, with the clarity there, we'll just move to a vote quickly enough. You can just vote from there, and it's okay. So all those in favor of the motion, which is the second reading. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All those opposed? Yeah, I note Director Cote and Director Bodnar. Okay, so 3 to 2, the motion carries. All right. What is the board's will, or at least the director's will? Dr. McNabb? Oh, you unmuted. Go ahead. Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
I muted myself instead of unmuting. I thought we already read second reading, or already voted on second reading.
No, we had not voted. This was the first one. So the first reading was done last time, and then it was.
No, but just now.
Yes.
I thought we voted on second. Could we clarify that with the clerk?
Was it second or third?
Second reading has been passed.
Okay. Because the first vote was on the original motion by Director Cote to defeat.
Oh, I see. To defeat. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's get moving on this. I would move that bylaw P1436, Sprout Lake Official Community Plan Amendment bylaw, be read a third time.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Shannon. Further comments? Seeing none, all those in, Director Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say that I've read this as well, and I understand the concerns from the residents, and I don't want to come across that those are being ignored. I agree with Director McNabb's comments on the zoning and what we have in place to allow something like this to happen. I mean, I'm not going to repeat everything he said because it makes sense. And I want to be clear that I'm supportive of this for an opportunity for more tourism and jobs, whether that's a few or how that ripple effect happens. But I am concerned about safety, and I would trust, as staff rationale have put in here, that when it comes to sewage and the access and road safety, that the bodies of government that are in charge of that, or the ministries, whomever, would take appropriate action to make sure that's met. I feel like we're doing our little section of this big one with the referrals, and to see how the process goes. I would like to try and support things like this, but they might get down to where there's more wastewater issues or island health or the fire department. And it's not easy, but I just want to say that I want to be supportive of things like this when they're done in the right way. And I think that staff, as Director Minions has said, has come up with some solutions or mitigations that addressed concerns. And hopefully this goes well, or if it gets defeated farther down the road, if the other subjects aren't met, then we go there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, any further comments? Probably not. Okay, all those in favor of third reading? 1, 2, 3, and all opposed? Okay, that's 2. Okay, motion carried. All right, that brings us to the second reading of the zoning atlas amendment bylaw. So moved, Director McNeil? Yep. Okay, and seconded by? Someone? Thank you, Director Beckett. Okay. Comments? Dr. Roberts, go ahead.
I'm having some difficulty with this. And I think Director Shannon mentioned it clearly that, you know, it goes to a certain level of government, and then, you know, where is it going to go from there without, my comments are such that I'm concerned about, the meeting technical referral agency requirements and particular highways. I mean, there's no guarantee that they're going to put down signage to restrict access at this point, or to not restrict access, but to slow down traffic. And as far as the other issues are concerned, their registered on-site wastewater practitioner says that this is capable of accommodating it, just confirming that. So it may be defeated there. Then private water system service to cottage development, again, it could be defeated there, but we don't know. And Sproat Lake Fire Department to confirm that adequate fire protection. So I'm not completely comfortable with where this can go. However, having said that, I agree with the comments that others have made, including Mayor Minions, that this is going to hopefully bring some benefit to the community as a whole, to the hotel and the store and so on and so forth. So I don't know at what point, maybe through Mr. Erg, at what point this can be stopped once these two bylaws are passed. Thank you.
So, Mike, I'd be quick about it. We've said this a couple of times already. It's up to those agencies to decide. So
yes, so the zoning bylaw sets the use, and then there's everything. Then it becomes technical requirements. So that's the purpose of the zoning bylaw, and then the corresponding covenant that's recommended. So that's what sets the maximum use, and then it's up to the property owners to meet all of the conditions for building permit for the ACRD and all the agency requirements.
okay, thank you for that, Mike. So that brings us to a vote on the second reading of the zoning atlas amendment bylaw. Okay. All right, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carries 3-2. And I'm assuming all of them will be registered? Yes, okay.
I move third reading of the zoning atlas amendment bylaw.
Thank you. Seconded by? Thank you, Director Beckett. All of those in favor? All opposed? 3-2 once more. Director Kemps, I don't think you get a vote on these. I think it's just electoral area directors. It's okay. Yes, but Mara doesn't get to vote. Oh, but yeah, I know there are. Yeah, but the votes are being cast 3-2. So, okay, and doesn't matter. He's either, he's either abstaining. It doesn't end up mattering unless. Okay,
So,
go ahead.
so I move that the applicants agree to enter into restrictive covenants limiting the number of cottages to 15 units.
Okay, do we have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Director Beckett. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried 4-2, and it'll be registered. Okay, so I just want to leave off with one comment from a governance perspective. I know it's very awkward when the electoral area directors overrule the home director of a given decision. This has happened in the past during this term of office, and it will happen in the future. There are governance benefits and detriments to going about it in this way, shape, or form. This is something that I think should be discussed the next time we, like, from a EA director committee perspective, just going into orientation, because it's really awkward right now, and this is just how governance goes. So with that in mind, I would just remind everyone that this is meant to be this way, because sometimes it's necessary for some to overrule others, depending on the type of decision that has been stated. So I would remind the fact that temporary use permits have been denied, even though the home director wanted it to go forward. And these things are going to happen. And it's something that can be a little more incendiary during an election year, but it happens. And I want folks to kind of understand that, take a breath, and we'll move forward. So the next item is 9.2A, which is West Coast Housing Memorandum of Understanding. And that is, I think, just Mike again. So, yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, yeah, just so a memorandum of understanding for the governments responsible on the West Coast working together, and staff recommend that the board endorse the MOU, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any comments or questions? Dr. Steer, go ahead.
I'll just make the motion if there are no questions that the Board of Directors endorse the West Coast Housing Memorandum of Understanding.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director. Okay. No comments? All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, that brings us to staff reports. We only have the one, which is the Fire Smart presentation. So thank you for being patient, sir. I don't see your first name. So Randy, thank you for being here. And we're just going to set everything up here and then we'll go. Maybe. Wendy. Notice on title. Yeah. I still don't know the answer and haven't figured it out.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to speak on the topic of wildfire threats to our community. My name is Randy Thone, and I'm the new Fire Smart Coordinator for the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District. And for those of you who don't know me, my wife and I, we've lived in this valley for a little over 30 years and raised our family here. I most recently retired from the Port William Fire Department last spring after 25 years of service, 7 years of that as the Chief Fire Prevention Officer. During that time as a Fire Prevention Officer, my role was inspection, education, and that sort of thing. And I have a very strong background in that. As well, I was working doing investigation and most recently doing fire investigations for insurance. When the opportunity came up to apply for this position, I jumped at it because I'm very passionate about living in the valley. And I think that we as a community can get together and do a lot of good things to help prevent wildfires from having the catastrophic effects that they've had in other communities in our province. I'm sure most of you are aware of some of the most recent issues we've had with things like Lytton and other communities. And if we cast our minds to Western Canada, when those fires are burning in our province, we're flooding Alberta, Saskatchewan, and even as far as Manitoba with our wildfire smoke, which creates significant health and economic losses. Wildfire is not new to Canada, it's not new to BC, and it's not new to North America. We've had a lot of opportunities to study our wildfires, and we've come up with a few ideas on how to mitigate some of these catastrophic losses. And in Canada, we call it Fire Smart. Principles around that are quite simple. And most recently, the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District has received funding for this project, along with the City of Port Alberni, Hepatchisa, and Sechot First Nations. And the Regional District is now delivering that program across the region. So my goal here today is to raise public awareness. Right now, we're very wet outside, and wildfire issues are not top of mind for most folks. So I'm hoping that the viewing public will take advantage of the few slides and a video that I'm going to show you to bring that to top of mind and take advantage of some programs that are happening in the valley here. And also I'm hoping to locate what we call the neighborhood champion. Fire Smart Canada Neighborhood Championship or Champion program is a program developed to recognize neighborhoods that get together and collectively do work in their neighborhood to mitigate wildfire hazards and develop resiliency. And so I'm hoping that some of our folks that are watching this might be interested in stepping up for that. So let's start with Fort McMurray in 2016. I think we're all familiar with that. We're going to look at a dash cam video, and I'll drag it through fairly quickly. It's interesting to watch in full if you've got the time. So if you're going to search it on YouTube, it's called Fire 2 of 6 Fire Dash Cam. And so on May 4th, 2016, in the Beacon Hill neighborhood, we have so as you can see, we've got a lot of smoke showing up on the left-hand side of the screen. We've got no fire happening on the right-hand side of the screen. And the gentleman on the motorbike is the guy we want to watch. So right now, he's still casually driving down the road, looking at the fire. And then as we get a little further down the road, he's getting closer and closer to the yellow line and turning his head away from the heat. You can still see the fire on the left-hand side of the road and very happening on the right-hand side of the road. And I'd like you to pay attention to the small shrubs and bushes around the front lawns along the way here. So now he's starting to duck his head a little bit, getting a little bit more convected heat. And shortly here, he's going to take advantage of the get up and go that Harley has. He's going to take off. As we watch, we can see him spotting on the road here. Keep going down the road. Let's watch these fires grow in size. As we see the fire engine go by, we see the sparks on the road. Those are embers that are going in the wind. The bush on fire in front of that house. And as we get going a little further, you can see how large that fire is getting and what is it impinging on, but the house that it's burning in front. And so that, in short, is how. Oops, let's see what
Are you looking to, what are you looking to do?
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So, it's a complex problem. Typical wildland-urban interface fires, they move fast. Structures and wildfire fuels are involved, and multiple structures ignite at once, developing extraordinary losses and a huge cost. So without appropriate mitigation, without appropriate pre-fire mitigation, fire department efforts are usually overwhelmed. So is more fire control the answer? Well, I would suggest that it probably isn't. This is the cycle we see. A wildfire disaster sequence starts with severe fire conditions. So we have very dry fuel, weather, and topography. Now we have a fire develop and it spreads rapidly with high intensity. The urban fire begins when we have multiple simultaneous ignitions, and it doesn't take long for both wildland and structural fire suppression to be overwhelmed. This reduces our fire protection, and it uses up all of our resources, and therefore we become ineffective in that disaster, and we end up in a disaster where many homes are totally destroyed. How do we interrupt that? Well, if we look at it from the perspective of we're going to break the wildfire disaster sequence, we still have our severe conditions, we still have our wildland fire happen, but when it gets to the urban interface, we stop that transition of fire from wildland fuels to built fuels. And if we can prevent those first few houses on that interface from catching fire, they will likely not spread throughout the community and create that massive disaster that we're used to seeing on the news now.
So just to interrupt you,
yeah.
Does that mean controlling like underbrush on the wildfire side of things?
Yeah, so there's a number of principles that are applied, and we'll talk a little bit about that as I get going here. But that is part of the principles that we apply. So in the slides here, we're looking at a picture of a duplex structure that was built inside a warehouse-sized fire lab. And so basically they use a fan-generated ember storm to expose these buildings to what would be happening in a wildland fire. And so the fire in a wildland fire is burning in the bush, it crowns and it's going across the treetops. The smaller, lighter fuels are burning up and the embers from that fire being carried in the convected wind currents ahead of the fire. Those embers are what interact with the small bushes and shrubbery and light fuels like dry leaves and pine needles around our house. And then they extend into the structure. If we can prevent our homes from igniting, we stop that, we interrupt that disaster. So in the picture here, what we have on the left-hand side of that duplex is a house that's sided in cedar shingles. And on the other side, it's got hardy plank or cement board siding. And it has what we call a Class A type roof, which is asphalt shingles. So some of the things that we can do to prevent those things from happening are things like non-combustible siding, non-combustible roofs. We protect our venting that goes into the roof, our dryer vents, that sort of stuff, by using metal ones with screening. And then we prevent that interaction of the embers. They land on the structure, but they don't have that lighter fuel that it needs to ladder into the building. So how do we reduce the risk of wildfire losses? Well, it depends on what happens before the fire. Just like in our public buildings, our provincial fire code requires our community to do inspections to make sure that things like egress and detection systems are in place. If we do some things prior to fire happening in our community, we should hopefully prevent those disasters from happening in the future. And it really means, what are we going to do? We're going to get into our yards, our streets, and on our homes, and we're going to create a safe area called a home ignition zone. Pardon me. So communities that pardon me, I'm going too far here. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, so getting Fire Smart. The purpose of this program is to get Fire Smart into our private lands, our residents, acreages, etc., into our backyards, homes, and front yards as well. The Fire Smart, as I started out, the Fire Smart Neighborhood Recognition Program is designed to recognize neighborhoods that do that work. In BC, the first community to be recognized as a Fire Smart community in 2013 was Logan Lake. And that wildfire resiliency that they built into their community was very beneficial to them last summer. Their community survived a very near miss with a large fire that went past their community. We're hoping that we can generate enough interest in the valley here to create a neighborhood, a fire smart neighborhood, and we're hoping that there might be some people that would want to champion that. And if they are, I'm happy to work with them. How that works is the neighborhood, once they've had a collective decision to do this, they contact me at the ACRD office. I come out and help work them through developing a plan. And then once they've completed that plan, we assess that work, we apply to Fire Smart Canada, and they get recognition. And that designation gives them an opportunity to apply for some grant money to do continued work in the neighborhood and also reward themselves for that work. So I'm happy to work with anybody in that area if they're interested in doing that. If you have a concern about wildfire issues in your neighborhood, then you should contact the regional district office here. It's really quite simple. Almost all of the items in the 7 steps are basically sweat equity. A few things require some professional help, but if you're interested, contact me and let me know. You can also look up this information on firesmartbc.ca. Part of our funding this year has allowed us to create a curbside pickup program. And so there's some information in the slide here about that program. Again, if you contact the ACRD office, or our email address for that is firesmart@acrd.bc.ca. We'd be happy to work with you to get that yard waste removed. Basically, branches and limbs, nothing bigger than 4 inches in diameter. And there's some criteria there, but contact us and we'd be more than happy to work with you on that. And of course, if you're looking for more information or want to have a free home assessment completed, you can contact me. And again, at those same numbers, the front office or firesmart@acrd.bc.ca. I'm happy to work with anybody on this subject, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. If you could stop sharing just so I can see other folks too.
Yep.
That'd be great. Wendy, you might need to help them stop sharing. Or you got it?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Director Roberts, go ahead.
Yeah, just through the chair. Thank you, Randy. A much appreciated comment. Fire smarting has always been a big issue for me. I was originally working with the Ministry of Forest to develop programs for that years ago. My background is 33 years in the fire service and also as an arson investigator level 3. My point here is that this community in the Alberni Valley is closely tied to the forest industry. And we know that mature forests don't burn the same as logged areas because the moisture is lost through the air and it creates a fire hazard. I know that some communities and some areas that the forest companies are actually going in and doing some fire smarting themselves to remove the ladder limbs from the bottom and so on and so forth. And I do appreciate the fact that the Valley has taken steps to provide that kind of protection with and through yourself, and the idea of people being able to drop off their material for pickup after contacting you or by contacting you, then that's great. Ladder materials around the homes, such as you've shown there, the siding and so on and so forth, and the planting of non-coniferous forest around your property using deciduous trees and so on in place of it is also a really helpful situation for the homeowners. And the people that are adjacent to forests must take advantage of this program. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I hope people take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Director Corbeil and then Director Shannon.
Thank you. And Randy, thank you for your presentation. And it's great to see boots on the ground in this with the urban wildfire potential anyways in Port Alberni. And much of what Cal just talked about, the Port Alberni and the regional district is surrounded by forest, whether it's city-owned, regional, First Nations, Crown lands, and Mosaic. Now, how do we go about dealing with all those entities in regards to fuel management? And I'll start with an easy one. Randy, we live in the same neighborhood. At the end of the block is city-owned property. And, there's fir with root rot that continually blows down. Not a lot, but there's probably, a half a dozen trees that have blown down and they lay there rotting away, and they're extremely dry and quite flammable, I would suspect now. How do we start dealing with those issues and all those different agencies and companies to be able to do something about that fuel that just sits on the ground, and heaven forbid that somebody has a campfire in the bush that gets away? And, I hope that you're able to bring some of those people together to start talking about this. So again, thank you for your presentation. And the fear of wildfires is definitely real in this valley.
Heather, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just to sort of touch on your questions, Director Corbeil, one of the things that Randy will be doing is forming a Fire Smart committee and sort of engaging with all of those landowners that you just mentioned, because our project, our funded project this year is really focused on the individual homeowner. We're not looking at mitigation in the forest surrounding the community, but that can be a further discussion. And like you said, it needs to include Crown land, and it needs to include Mosaic, just given their land base around our community. So that could expand to mitigation works, but really this year is focused on the individual homeowner while also forming that Fire Smart committee.
Thank you for that, I don't know who's next. Is that Director Bodner? Yeah, and then Director Cote? Okay, please go ahead, Director Bodner.
Thank you. Yes, I enjoyed that presentation, and what comes to mind right away in my area of Cherry Creek, there so many homes are right there at the very bottom of the mountain, and I'm sure something like this could be brought to a lot of people's attention. Not just in my area, but maybe even in Beaufort, people that live at the bottom of the mountains. Is it possible that you might be able to come and give a presentation to at Cherry Creek Hall for people to be aware and what they can do within their own homes? The weather right now is so unpredictable and changes so fast, and it would really be a good idea to be prepared to look at what they could do, and if you like going to specific districts may get more people out to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you to the chair, to your comments. It's timely to bring that up, because that is part of my mandate this summer, is to work with those areas in the community that are closest to that interface. So I've had discussions with representatives in each of the fire department areas who are very eager to have them come and speak to the community. The area that you mentioned in Cherry Creek is probably very sensitive based on some fire activity that happened near their properties last summer. And so we're working with those folks to host a community event and educate some folks, and hopefully, like I said, develop that neighborhood approach to things. To Councillor Corbeil's comments and others, there's work that can be done in critical infrastructure work within the forest area, but it begins with what you can do yourself at your home. And so primarily working with residents, trying to get them to look at the low-hanging fruit, the easy things that they can take care of. Because if they prevent their house from being a victim in that fire, their neighbor's house won't be exposed, et cetera, and it spreads and builds from there. So those areas around the city and the region we're in that interface or intermix. We're working to generate interest so we can hold those meetings and educate people on those opportunities to create some resiliency in our community.
Thank you for that. Next up, I have Director Cote and then Director Shannon. Am I missing anybody? I have quite a few things to say, but they'll just be comments, not questions. Please go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. Sprout Lake has actually done a Fire Smart project out at the community hall where they have fire smarted the wooded area. So if you want to use that as an example, that's great. Thunderbirds came in and did the work. Are we partnering? I have a few questions. So are we partnering with the Thunderbirds going forward at all? My area, we're looking at possibly putting in a new access for fire trucks to get in and out of one of the areas. So I'm wondering if there's going to be any grants that are going to be available in the near future for that type of work, and if you're actually going to be looking at that type of assistance for a community. Thanks.
Through the chair, so what I can tell you for sure is that we are working with our local wildfire group that's out at the airport at the moment, because things are so wet. They're always appreciative of any opportunities to hone their skills, particularly chainsaw skills. So if and when we identify those areas where they can apply themselves there, we certainly invite them to be a part of it. And then as we get a little further into the summer, where their operational requirements to be redeployed to other areas, there may not be a resource that's available to us. But certainly we've had those discussions already. I spoke earlier about the neighborhoods and what residents can do themselves. Certainly from a municipal point of view, chatting with parks people from the city and other people that are involved in planning work, when they're talking about doing any kind of work in an area, if there's an opportunity to apply some fire smarting, we've had some preliminary discussions about that. So it's a collective effort. It isn't going to happen overnight, but every journey starts with the first step, and you put a few more steps in behind it. So thank you.
All right, Dr. Shannon, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just giving direction to the offspring. Randy, thank you for the presentation. I have a question regarding the curbside pickup for debris. It says that it is for people with disabilities or lack of transportation. Are those parameters there because of the grant, or have we decided to put those there? I just asked because I'm wondering if they weren't there, if there might be more uptick in the program if we're really focusing on homeowners doing what they can for preventative maintenance. Thanks.
I would have to defer to Heather Zenner for that. I didn't put together the curbside program.
I can answer that. Director Shannon, we just put that limitation on because we thought in a community the size of the Alberni Valley, we might have too many requests. So it's really directed towards people that don't have a truck and don't or might have mobility issues, but we haven't turned anybody away if the service is really needed.
Okay, thank you for that. So I have quite a few comments. I'm going to go through them quickly, and they don't need to be responded to. So I'm really interested in the idea of having some sort of committee to follow on the work that's being contemplated here. I do understand that we are focusing on getting the public to individually through households kind of go through this program, and I think that's a really good idea. So first off, I think what we might be able to do is get some help from George and use OBS to maybe do a 2 to 3 minute version of the presentation you just did. You have a good voice, so just put a headset on you, and that's something we can get on Facebook, on the different channels and that sort of thing. We want as many people to know about this as possible, because when I'm contemplating the risk profiles of each of the different types of housing, you don't just say interface, you say intermixed, because it is an intermixed type of thing. And the more people we have acting on this, the lower the chance that their house will keep the chain going, so to speak. So lowering the risk profile of all of the houses that are in the intermixed or interface zones seems like it's something that we should think about from a collective perspective, because you're not just helping your own house, you're helping all the people behind you, especially if you're holding the line, so to speak. So in that vein, to what degree can we interface with the province and the federal government in regards to climate change mitigation and adaptation money? This is exactly the type of thing we need to avoid. And so maybe this becomes an item we talk about at EBCM. It may be something that's already being dealt with. And how can we get the insurance industry involved? They must have run the numbers in regards to what those risk profiles may be. They're probably looking at them in the perspective of even running Monte Carlo simulations. So, like, what can we do to get that get that information to get some momentum behind it? Because we're in a place, especially some of our electoral areas, that are really vulnerable to this sort of thing. Another thing I noted was, what are the types of things that we can do in regards to identifying, this is for the committee in the future, identifying those really high risk zones? What are the things we can do collectively to help them out, or to rezone to say, okay, no more bushes, or okay, next time this house gets updated, you got to put the right siding on, or the good roofs. How do we find incentives for those homeowners to do that sooner than later? How does illegal camping interface with this? Because we can zone for housing all we want, but if there are people out there who are just camping and using whatever the heck they want out there, there's a risk. And in fact, if fire sweeps over certain areas, even on the West Coast, that's a lot of people who are in danger. And lastly, are we talking about things like prescribed burning in wildfire zones? And is that something that we want to be open to? It's different on the West Coast, but I would note that the Chilcotin tribes are doing that in their territories right now. And it looks very interesting, because that can be something that creates even more of a break between communities and forest fires that are likely going to occur because of that climate change. La Nina weather notwithstanding. So those are just all my comments. I have Heather, and then we'll end off with Dr. Roberts and Dr. McNabb.
I just wanted to make a comment. We really want Randy to be busy. We want the program to gain momentum this summer. So we're often sharing information on Twitter and Facebook. We'd really appreciate if directors could also share that. And if you're putting out a newsletter or you're putting out some information, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to share some content with you. One of the programs is we have a rebate program for homeowners. So if they have Randy come out and do a home assessment and they do the mitigation work that's recommended, they can apply for a $500 rebate so they can reimburse some of their costs. We've only handed out a couple of rebates, so we're really hoping that we can get some take up in the program more this year. So please help us share the word. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Roberts, and then Director McNabb.
Yeah, thanks for that. With regards to people putting out the refuse along the side of their properties or in front of their properties, and I guess it should go through to Heather. When that is being picked up, is it being recycled, or is it chipped, or what's the situation that can be used in landfill for management? Anyway, that's it. Thank you, and appreciate the comments, and thanks to Randy. I hope this program takes off, and we can perhaps include in this cleaning up the areas, getting rid of the broom as well, because that's a real fire starter for sure. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Director McNabb. Please go ahead.
So I'd like to move receipt of the report, and just to comment that interphase fire in our community is the #1 possibility of disaster. And that it certainly earthquake and tsunami don't, in my mind, come to the level of interphase fire. So prevention is absolutely huge. We need to move the matches to the highest point in our houses, and we need to encourage people that are going to use the bushes, the logging roads and the trails and camping, not to have open fires, and somehow educate them to that point. So that's it. Thanks.
All right, Seconded by Dr. Roberts, and I sent a new chair for that Fire Smart Committee. Dr. Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a question, and Director Cote might have more information on this. I believe the Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department is our local representative or partner with the WASP watering systems for homeowners. You can order them online. Basically, they're little hoses that you connect to your garden hose with a sprinkler that you can put on your roof. And I'm just wondering if there's opportunity with Sprout Lake or any other programs like that that we're working with this Fire Smart program as part of it. Not just debris removal, but some other options.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you through the chair to Ms. Shannon there. So yeah, there are a number of tools available for people to purchase to protect their homes, and like a sprinkler protection type of device. What I would recommend that folks do is get a hold of their fire department or of me so that we can have that discussion first. Sprinkler protection units do work if they're applied properly. A resident just setting up a set of sprinklers and putting a demand on the limited water supply sometimes not helpful and can actually hamper suppression activities because they're using water in the wrong place. So I'd really encourage people to, if they're going to take advantage of something like that and go to that expense, they might want to consult with an expert on that, on the placement and how they're deployed, so that they're not, first of all, not wasting resources that can be used elsewhere, but more importantly, not wasting money on things that may not be necessary because their home already has a number of features in place that would protect it in the event of a wildfire.
All right, thank you for that. Any further comments? Director Cote, please go ahead.
And if you want to buy one, you can call Sprout Lake Fire Department.
Okay. With that in mind, all those in favor of receiving a report? Motion carried. Thank you so much for your presentation. This is definitely one of those things that's so important for the whole of our communities. Okay, so that brings us into, there are no committee reports. I don't believe there are any other reports, unfinished business, no late business. I didn't mention responses. That's the one thing I didn't do at the beginning of the meeting. Do we have any messages in that email address?
No, Mr. Chair, we have no comments or questions from the public respecting the meeting today.
All right, thank you very much. That brings us to a motion to go into recess for the hospital district meeting. Thank you, Director McNabb, and seconded by Director Bodner, I guess. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to note that I'm a little concerned about quorum because we are down to 8 people now, so hopefully
Yeah.
I don't lose a few more.
Okay, and we do have an in-camera item, so please, well, yeah, please stick around if you can.
We'll roll through the hospital quick. So I'd like to call this meeting to order and recognize that we are meeting in the traditional territories of the Athshesit and Tishat First Nations and all of the other ones in the New Chalmouth areas, and that we honor and respect that. And also notify that the attendees and delegate that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube and on the Regional District website. So I'd like to ask for approval of the agenda, please. Director Corbeil and Director Steer. Any additions or deletions to that? All in favor? Approved. And adoption of the minutes of the meeting of May 11th, 2022. And Director Corbeil and Steer again. Any errors or omissions in there? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. And information for correspondence, or correspondence for information. Island Health news release. So I'm not quite sure who wants to handle this, but Wendy, maybe?
Mr. Chair, yes, we did share this with the Alberni Clackawanna Health Network. So I believe that's something they're looking into. I don't know if Director Cote knows any more as chair of the health network.
My only thoughts with, or not my only thought, but one of my thoughts with regards to this is we may be able to use this for the heat wave mitigation, that we might be able to put an application for some kind of a program with regards to that. Unfortunately, Heather has left. So maybe Mr. Sellon could talk to her about that and see if there's a possibility. The concept with regards to using either city buses or the Handy Dart buses to rotate in the community and pick up people and keep them cool and drop them off when they want to be dropped off might be a starter of some sort, but Heather would have to rationalize that and see if that's even a thought. So a motion to receive this correspondence for information.
I have a comment.
Dr. Steer and Dr. Bodnar. Did you have a question there, sorry, Penny, or a comment?
So regarding the wellness grant, I'm not sure if this is the one, but I know that one of the members of the table of partners is buying fans and stockpiling them for heat wave. If there's a need, then people will be able to access these fans free of charge. And other than that, I think that's all I've heard at the table of partners at the health network.
Okay, Mr. Sellon, did you have your hand up there or walk in there? Saw you on screen.
Thank you. I did jump in. I was just going to respond to what you said, and I will follow up to look at the angles.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor. Any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Now, go through this list, and I'm not going to miss Director Cote. It's my project here for today. So Director Beckett has left the meeting. So Alberni Claycock Continuing Care Society, Director Bodnar.
Thank you. On May the 26th, there was an Employees Appreciation Night, and that was really an uplifting thing to attend. And that's the first time in a couple of years they've been able to hold it. And it seemed to be everybody seemed to enjoy themselves at that. COVID, there are a few residents that have been getting it, and the COVID doesn't seem to be as severe, and it's being treated on individual cases. The 4th booster shot has been done in both the homes. One of the biggest things that they're having to deal with, of course, which seems to be what everybody has a problem with, is getting staff, or having nurses. The nurse shortage is still an issue, but they're looking forward to hiring 2 LPN students when their courses are finished this spring or this summer. And they have hired a grad student, RN student, and an LPN. So it looks like the summer is not going to be as bleak as what it could be. And their AGM is on June the 28th at the Barclay. That's it.
Thank you. West Coast Native Health Care Society, Director Cote.
Thank you. So at our last board meeting, which is the 3rd Thursday of the month, or it was the 4th because they changed, we had a tour of the new facility of the 40 units. They should be completed this fall, 2022, ready for move-in. Beautiful units. I believe there's 2 or 4, I think, that are 2-bedroom. The rest are all 1-bedroom, but they're big enough for 2 people. West Coast Native Healthcare, they just they completed our accreditation. So great, thanks.
Tofino General Hospital, West Coast Directors, Dr. Steer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just nothing new to report. The same capital projects are still underway. I did want to note that at this time that all 10 beds are full, and in fact, the lounge is being utilized for acute care patients. And as you all know, we're not even into our busy season yet. So I also wanted to throw out with this opportunity to thank staff have been going above and beyond the call of duty at the West Coast General Hospital and Tofino General Hospital, sorry. And the work that they're doing there is exemplary. There are people coming out of retirement to fulfill a lot of those administrative positions to give a break to those that are working there. So a real big shout out to the staff at all levels at the hospital.
And I see you were able to continue on with your care center in Ucluelet as well. So that's kind of a good point.
Yeah, and that was negotiations, and Director Cole would have more to say, and I know that the negotiations with the doctors to continue that facility with Island Health taking up that lease has been incredibly important for the communities in the region.
All righty. This is the one I generally miss, and I have no idea why. Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network.
All right. So our next meeting is going to be a hybrid meeting. It will be our last one before the summer break. So hopefully we'll have quite a few of our Table of Partners members. This group has never met face to face, so it's been an interesting time. Also like to say that after our meeting, a few of us will be attending the housing workshop next Wednesday, and the minutes of the last Health Network meeting are in your agenda. So if you have any questions, please ask. Thanks.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. West Coast General Hospital, I attended the construction overview meeting again last Tuesday. And good news is that they are not waiting for any of the equipment or products. They are on time delivery at the moment, which is a really good thing because we had some problems earlier. They did manage to get the canopy back up with the roofing material on it. So that is going to be, that's sort of puts them into the next phase. It's a much larger canopy than previously. And that's for the entrance of the emergency area. So right now there's a temporary entrance, which was closed partly because of the canopy going up, but now is open. So on sort of on time, hopefully on budget, and really logistically, I can't believe how much logistical input is there at those meetings. Everything from paint color to what kind of taps they're going to put in the sinks, and everything else is discussed. So it's interesting. It's a bit time consuming, but it's good to know. And that's it, unless anybody else has got another report. So it's sitting on the table. No, a motion to receive the reports.
So moved.
Director Shannon and Director Roberts, and all in favor? Good. Anybody opposed? No, we're good. Okay, we've got late business. No late business that I know of. Question period. Is there anybody online?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and we'll have a motion to adjourn. Director Roberts and Director Shannon, all in favor? Great. On to the next thing.
All right, thank you. We'll reconvene at 4:32. And that brings us into the in-camera portion of the, I am going to read out a motion to go in camera. This will be the final bit of our live broadcast. And here we go. So this is a motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter under sections 191F, law enforcement. If the board considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an enactment. And 291G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the regional district. And so moved. Do we have a seconder?